Well, everyone, the unthinkable happened. Donald Trump got elected president of the United States. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today. I have to acknowledge that I had predicted that Kamala Harris was going to win. I predicted that it was going to be an 80% chance that she would win, but Trump still took the day. I'm going to be discussing that in this video. And we'll also be discussing the near future as far as President Trump's chart goes, and a little bit of a general view of how his presidency may go during this next 4 years. Now, for those of you that are new to my channel, make sure you like and subscribe. I practice Vedic sidereal astrology. The goal is 10,000 subscribers. And if you're interested in a personal private reading, check down below for details. And just as a reminder, this astrology rating is for entertainment purposes only. All these statements about President Trump, well, they are all my interpretation of the astrological data. So let's talk about what happened, because I had predicted that Kamala was going to win, that she had an 80% chance of winning. I did see that there was a slight chance that Trump could win, and that's why I couldn't entirely make the prediction 100% for Kamala Harris. And I'm glad I didn't, because she didn't end up winning. But I need to take accountability for my prediction. And so we have to realize that astrology is very nuanced. As an astrologer, I do take a risk, anytime I make a prediction, and I have to weigh those risks. But people want to see that. People want us to make predictions as far as these elections go. I'm going to be using this as a lesson to be learned. I'm realizing the importance of transits and how they operate in the chart. We're going to be talking about some of the transits that I may have basically not taken the strength of these transits enough and realized that they were very powerful transits in Trump's chart during that day. And also, I do want to admit, I did have a little bit of bias, and I had to do a little bit of self-reflection on this one. Because of Trump's legal issues, this may have influenced my interpretation. So I'm committed to more objectivity in my future predictions. And I just want to thank you all for your continued support of my channel. And I'm going to use this as a learning experience to, be more neutral in my predictions and really hone my reading abilities through looking at these transits a little more closely. Now let's talk about Donald Trump's chart on the day of election. And let me pull up the chart really fast here. So what basically happened on the day of the election? And I talked about this in the video I made with the prediction video I made, was I was focused mostly on the Vimshatari Dasha, which is over here, which he's in a Jupiter Venus period. And let me write that down, Jupiter Venus. And we'll talk about that. Well, Jupiter in his chart's in the second house. It rules the fifth house and the eighth house. Now, the eighth house, traditionally, it's a very difficult house to deal with. Usually, it represents misfortune. So I was seeing that from that kind of point of view. But the eighth house, and I did mention this in the past video, the eighth house does have to do with things like resurrection, rebirth, kind of like a phoenix rising from the ashes. And that's kind of what happened with Donald Trump's story. Is, if we remember, he lost the 2020 election. And there was a lot of controversy surrounding that. And then he was this kind of underdog, if you want to think about it. Well, he's been portrayed that way, especially with all these legal cases that have been happening the last few years. And then all of a sudden he makes this shocking win. So that's definitely an eighth house kind of situation, which is, it was shocking to me. I was actually very shocked when Trump was able to pull this off. Let's talk about the Venus Antardasha. And by the way, the Venus Antardasha, I don't think I mentioned, it's from October 2023. Or sorry, I wrote that down wrong. It's September of 2024 to May of 2027. So this is the period he's in right now. He's in this Venus Antardasha, which is the sub period. We'll talk about that for a moment when we get into a little bit longer prediction here in a moment. But remember, Venus, and this is one of the reasons I was having a little bit of difficulty predicting Trump was Venus is in the 12th house, which is usually associated with losses. It's with Saturn, and Saturn is the sixth lord. However, the thing is Venus rules the 10th house in his chart, and the 10th house has Sun there and Rahu there. So this could catapult somebody to leadership. Now, the transits that I feel like really propelled him that day, besides Rahu transiting the eighth house, was Jupiter was in the 10th house. This was kind of the grace. There's another astrologer on YouTube that really predicted this right, got this right about Jupiter being in the 10th house. And then we had planet Venus in the fourth house. Now, I underestimated planet Venus in the fourth house because I didn't realize what was going on there was Venus, which is the 10th lord, is aspecting the 10th house. Okay, so it's aspecting the 10th house, and then Jupiter. So there's two benefic planets that were essentially, and I'm doing this line for Jupiter, but two benefic planets were essentially shining on that house. Okay, so we had Jupiter, Venus really strongly, and remember, he's in a Jupiter Venus period. And when you're running the Mahadasha or the Antardasha of the planet, the transiting planet of the Antardasha or the Mahadasha are the most important planets to look at. And so I didn't fully take those into account. So that's what happened basically was these planets supported him getting into the presidency. Now, that being said, this transit is very temporary. Beyond November, well, I mean, Jupiter is going to be in the 10th house for a little while, but Venus is already transited out of the fourth house. So this was kind of a one-day snapshot where there was this powerful energy there that really helped. Now, let me pull up the slide and we'll talk about, we'll break that down in a moment. And let me clear up the chart. Now, I do feel like we'll talk about this after I show the slide, but this transition that's happening with Donald Trump, I do feel like we could have an international crisis within the next 2 months, while this transition is happening between the Biden administration and the Trump administration, which could make this a very rough transition. So we'll be talking about that because remember, there's the Mars transit that's happening the first week of December. So we'll be breaking that down in just a moment. Let me pull up the slide. And remember, we talked about the Jupiter-Venus timeline. I was a little bit more focused on that in my prediction. But the other thing I want to bring up is Saturn in the seventh house. And let me bring that up. That actually helped. I didn't think this would help Donald Trump, but Saturn in the seventh house. Remember, we're towards the end of the transit of this transit right now. Saturn was in the seventh house since January of 2023. It's going to be there till March of 2025. And so I thought that we weren't near enough to the end of the transit for it to be bringing this sense of fairness into Trump's life, because that's what Saturn's working on doing. Well, it was there. So in Trump's mind, what the astrology chart shows is there was this great injustice back when Saturn was in the sixth house. And Saturn was in the sixth house when he lost in 2020. So this may be part of his story. There was this injustice. Now, remember, this is from his point of view. It doesn't mean that, there was an actual injustice. This is from Trump's point of view. And so Saturn is working to correct that injustice during the transit, this current transit in the sign of Aquarius. Well, it's fulfilled that role. So maybe he feels that he finally got his sense of justice. He did win, and it looked like he pretty much won in a landslide. So he did get what he wanted out of this thing. Now let's bring up the slide again, and so Rahu Ketu, Rahu in the eighth house, that was very supportive of this resurrection idea. Okay, so there were a lot of these two powerful transits with Venus being in the fourth house of Scorpio and then Jupiter being in the 10th house of Taurus. I underestimated the strength and power of those transits. All right, so let's go talk about a little bit of the near future. Now, that being said, now that Trump's been elected, let's remember he's in this Venus Antardasha from now until May of 2027. Okay, let me write that down. May of 2027. So this Venus energy is very much active right now. Now, just because Venus rules the 10th house and it got him, helped him become president, doesn't mean this is going to be easy by any means. It's next to Saturn. So, regardless of him being president, it doesn't show that there's not going to be obstacles. And I do feel and I do see there's going to be some serious obstacles. One of the things that's worrisome is Saturn in Trump's chart. It rules the sixth house, which can represent war. So war and things like debt, okay, war and debt, conflict, those things are being activated because Venus is next to Saturn. So there's a lot of heavy karma that's coming into this astrology chart during this period of time where there's this transition and the first couple of years of this a 4-year term that's happening. So there's a lot of obstacles. He also still may face a lot of opposition from enemies. I know I did see there was a video. Someone came out in New York. It was like a some legal person in New York came out and said they were still looking at Trump's case or something along those lines. And so there are still people. Legal battles may still be some sort of highlight during this time, that they're going to be constant obstacles, or at least maybe he'll see them as like a gnat that keeps on, it's there and it won't go away kind of thing. Now, the other thing I want to bring up is the Mars transit that's coming up. And remember, Mars right now is in the sign of Cancer. It's slowing down for the whole month of November as of when I make this video, but around December 5th is when it's actually going to go retrograde. Okay. So it's going to go retrograde. And it's in a powerful house in the United States chart. Okay. It's in the eighth house of the United States chart. So this is a very powerful retrograde that's going to be happening. Now, when it stations on December 5th, this is a powerful release of energy. And keep in mind, he's got planets. Now, I believe it's going to be at 12 degrees. They're not close by, but they're close enough where, especially with Saturn here, Saturn represents warfare and things. There could definitely be some sort of energy release that's really influencing Saturn during this time. So this transition, because of the Mars transit, I feel like the transition could be very rocky. And I feel like it might not be anything necessarily directly, it might not be directly involved with Trump himself. Although he's got to be careful because Saturn shows there's a lot of enemies that are active right now. But there could be an international event. And let me bring that up again. I don't think I talked about that, because Venus is in the 12th house, and because Mars is doing this station in the 12th house. This could be an international event. For example, Mars in the 12th house could represent a war that's originating in a foreign country, to the chart of the native that we're talking about. So this idea of escalation of warfare over the next couple of months is very strong. Okay. So if we get into a situation where there's an international crisis, this will make the transition even more tricky to really smoothly transition these administrations. So I do see that over the next couple months, there's an international crisis that's coming into view, and this should be a very difficult. This will potentially be a difficult transition, more difficult than that he thinks, because right now I think they're just going through the normal things. Like, he's talking about the executive orders he's going to sign when he gets in day one. He's talking about the people he's putting in his cabinet. There's more of a focus on that. So I feel like with this Mars transit could be something that's coming out of left field, something that we don't see coming. Okay. And something that really puts a wrench in a lot of these transition plans. So this should be really, this should be something we're watching over the next couple of months. I'm definitely going to be still watching the news about what's going on with this transition. Let me know what you think down below. Take care of yourselves, and I will be putting out videos very soon. So thank you very much, and I will see you in the next one.